This is an old Agilent Technologies campus, actually originally a Hewlett-Packard campus. They bought this back in the late 1980s, and at their peak they had about 3,000 people that were working out here. They actually had plans to expand it to 12,000 people. So this was a big plant. They put in a lot of infrastructure. There's actually a 18 megawatt substation here. There's a lot of heating and cooling. There's actually the train track that runs along the western border of the property. We're actually in this building here right now, so you can see there's 4 big buildings. So we bought this place, actually it says 2004, but in 2005. And one of the first things we wanted to do is trying to bring some of those jobs that were lost back in late 2000s back to Sonoma County and to Rohnert Park. So we started working on getting businesses out here. We actually started this enterprise, which is a nonprofit called the Sonoma Mountain Business Cluster. And what it tries to do is to help young startups, entrepreneurs, to build businesses and to grow businesses. We actually installed a lot of solar starting in 2006. You can see from the bottom some of the solar arrays. And what we wanted to do with this campus was actually create a new kind of community. So we started working on things like LEED to get it certified, our plan certified. We actually have the first large-scale plan for a LEED platinum community in the United States. That's what this is planned to be. We brought some other businesses in, Comcast, AT&T, DC Power, Stellar Energy, and right now there's about 40 different businesses that are located out here. So this is kind of what it looked like when we first bought it, and we've been remodeling it and retrofitting. This is that same building. This is actually our office, which when you were looking around, you may have seen this over on building 1400. This is that same building on the other end, and this is what it looks like today. So this is what the master plan is. The site is 200 acres. It's in the city limits of Rohnert Park. It's in, it used to be in a redevelopment district. I don't think there are redevelopment districts anymore in California. The plan is to build up to 1,700 homes here, and about 800,000 square foot of commercial. So that would be both office, industrial, and retail. And we plan on doing this over the next 15 years or so. The idea of the community is to create kind of a central gathering place or square, and this would be kind of like, if you're thinking of a town, it would be like the downtown. So a square not unlike, say, Hillsburg, where everything is an easy walk to get there. So it's a 5-minute community. So you can walk from the grocery store to your home, to the park, to the office, all-weather soccer field. There's actually a smart train station that's scheduled to go in. It's actually the Gitati station, and there's a bike and pedestrian path that connects this project to that train station, which is about a half of a mile away. Again, this is what it looks like today. We've installed about 2.2 megawatts of solar. It's about the largest privately funded solar array in the state of California. So you can see it covers about 4 acres. So all of the lights, all the electricity is all generated through solar currently. So the idea is to incorporate these existing buildings into this new community that would have the housing, that would have the retail, shop stores, athletic facilities. We're actually looking at starting some of the housing now, which I know that you would have an interest in beyond. Taking some of the existing buildings and actually converting them to residential. So we actually had an architect out here yesterday looking at some kind of innovative ways to do that. They'd be almost kind of like New York style lofts, so they'd have kind of that industrial look with the exposed ceilings, high ceilings, 14-foot ceilings. And so we're looking at whether that makes sense to actually open up some of the roofs, and so there's plenty of daylight and creating some, they'd be rental units. So you wouldn't be able to buy them, but rented the rental market, as you know, is still really strong. The other thing we decided to do was because we thought that LEED was kind of, although it's really good for a building, it's really kind of about energy efficiency only. And we wanted to do something that was a bit more comprehensive, a bit more holistic. So we came across a program, a certification called One Planet Communities. And the idea is this is an effort that was created by WWF, the World Wildlife Foundation out in Geneva, Switzerland. And what they have done is they basically have diagnosed the cause of global warming is lifestyles. How we get our food, how we transport ourselves, where we live, and how we live. And so basically if every person on the planet lived like the average American with our consumption of natural resources, you'd need about 5.5 planets to sustain life on Earth, which really isn't an option. So what they do is they try and identify and then certify different projects around the world that basically, because of the way they're designed and implemented, that they would basically dictate more of a one planet lifestyle. So if everybody lived like the people in the communities, that we could get by with one planet of resources. So we're very proud to be the first one in North America and one of about a dozen in the world. And so how do we become a one planet community? Again, it's much more comprehensive than just being energy efficient. It's that's part of it. Zero carbon, that's the first one, but it's zero waste, it's sustainable transportation. And there's also things like culture and heritage, embracing the history and the nature that exists here. Things like equity and fair trade, and paying living wages, kind of some of the basic things. So it's not just about being energy efficient, it's taking a much more of a holistic approach. Today, we're a business park for the most part, so we can't really do it because we don't have the housing, we don't have the transportation. But the plan is, and it's part of a 50-page document that we created in conjunction with WWF International and a company called Bioregional, which is out of England, that basically certifies these things. And it's a very comprehensive program. So the things that we have now is we are basically zero carbon. On the waste, it's basically recycling about 98% of what you use. We're lucky to have on the transportation the SMART train, the proposed rail station that's a half a mile away, the bike paths. So it's a whole bunch of things that we had to basically sit down for a period of months and determine how do you get to that. And it's not one thing, it's many, many things that when you combine them all together, it creates a very sustainable lifestyle.
With all the solar installation on the roofs of these big buildings, is there a storage mechanism so that it can provide energy at night as well?
No, basically what we do is we do a program called net metering. So, say in the winter, typically if it's, let's say last week when it was rainy and cloudy and we were generating, we're buying from PG&E. In the summer, when we're getting 14, 15 hours of sunlight, we'll actually be generating more than we use, so then we sell that back. So it's kind of like a bank account. So in the winter we deplete our bank account, and in the summer we fill it back up. And then the goal is at the end of the year, you haven't, your bank account's at zero, and then the next year it zeroes out. And well, it's kind of an experiment because we just installed this second, so we're going to be trying to zero it out as much as possible.
Right. And then with the houses coming in, will this be enough to bank that, or will you be installing more along with the houses?
Yeah, we've actually done, right now, has this changed, Dan? I don't know. It has been up to this point illegal to sell power over property lines.
Yeah, there are some restrictions about that, but
We've been working on trying to ease them. What we'd like to do is kind of have, say this is kind of like, think of it as a power plant, and then the homes could just buy the solar from the power plant. Instead of paying it for PG&E, you would just buy it from the central, you know, this commercial area, or whatever you wanna call these existing. So there's some things to be worked out there. With the first units, if we did an existing building, then that would be that would come from the on-site solar.
Is there plans for other buildings or other houses to be energy neutral as well?
Mhm.
By by
Yeah,
themselves?
I think you could probably even, I know we can, we could even do some buildings that are like net
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we want is like the overall thing to be neutral or even better.
Mhm.
Because when we started, you know, that was almost like impossible, but now the technology has evolved where we want to keep pushing that envelope and go as far as you want. But yeah, like they have these passive house designs and things that are pretty cool stuff, so we want to do all that sort of thing.
Talk a little about the on-site handling of stormwater and things like that.
So actually, on that site plan, we have a big soccer field. So one of the things the plan is to actually put a water catchment underneath that soccer field. So you store the rainwater, that'd be used for things like flushing toilets, doing laundry. Actually, all the landscape stuff now comes from reclaimed water that comes from the Santa Rosa plant. So right now, all of our landscape water is all reclaimed water.
So what's the ultimate goal here? Is it that you want to be totally sustainable, that you want to be your own little city, where you have everything here, that you might even have agriculture here, you can grow your own food, you've got a nice little hospital and things like that? I mean, is that basically
It's similar
what
to
this
that,
is gonna be
it's not
like?
that, I don't think that enclosed, I mean, you would interact with the rest of the community and be a part of that, but if you kind of wanted to live a really sustainable lifestyle, you could. You kind of have that option, and it would be something that we would, I don't know if promote's the right word, but we would encourage.
Mhm.
But it's not gonna be like a gated community where you can't,
Right.
it's like, you're very open to the rest of the community, but we wanna make it easy for people to live a sustainable lifestyle.
Marketing manager for Stellar Energy, and our business is located right across where that lawn is. They had some solar already, but they had intentions to add to it. And so I had gotten an aerial photographer to take images of it, because you cannot see these arrays from the ground floor, so no one would know about it, or people always ask me like, oh, well, what does this look like? But just to give you a little system description, it's 1.158 megawatts, which is pretty substantial. So it's not enough. Basically, he didn't really say this, but at this point, they're 100% solar powered. They provide enough electricity to meet the demands of all the different offices that are located here. It's kind of nice to bragging rights for them. And then also, Brad didn't talk about, but this project was financed in part through the Sonoma County Energy Independence Program, which is, people know as SCIPE. And it's one of the largest projects to be funded by SCIPE. So SCIPE is one of the original PACE programs in the country, if you don't count Berkeley really. And what it does is it allows a property owner to leverage the equity in their building and use that as collateral to get, it's not really a loan, but it's an assessment. And so it makes it easier for people to sort of take out credit to pay for renewable upgrades, with the main goal being that the energy savings from their utility bill will help them pay back what they had taken out to pay for the solar in this case. And for some people it may take 5 years, some people 7 years, some people 20 years. But the nice part about the way a SCIPE program would work is if you sell your property, that assessment goes with the new property owner. So you're not kind of like stuck paying for an asset that someone else is now benefiting from. Sonoma Mountain Village has a performance monitoring display, so they can put that on their website, and then they have it in the lobby here. And it's sort of a way of showing their coworkers or their partners or visitors or anybody who comes here that, hey, this is a solar powered facility, and they can actually monitor the production that they're getting. Brad and his organization, it's a real, I'll say an honor and a pleasure to have them as a client, because they really are walking their talk. I mean, they're not just saying we're green. He forgot to mention too that they went through a period of a year or two of retrofitting a lot of their lighting and their appliances and their HVAC systems to get greater efficiency. As people would say, reduce before you produce. And I think that was a very smart idea, because if anyone who's considering solar, whether for your home or for your business, if you can get yourself efficient first, then you'll save money and need a less smaller size solar system like that. So that's becoming more common.
Anything about time varying pricing, what PG&E is going to be doing about charging energy at peak hours?
So, yeah, I always think everyone does this. When you get your electric bill, there is time of use in when you're using that electricity. So, say for example, in my house we try to put our laundry machine on delay, so it runs at night, or the dishwasher, you just let it go, because the cost of electricity in the evening is more affordable than during the day. But the nice part about most businesses is when the sun is at its peak and when you're producing the most solar energy is typically during the day, when a lot of businesses are open and using that energy. And it kind of works out nice. I mean, I could show you like what's called a value of solar curve. So the time of use is, people also have, most people, if you're a residential person, you just kind of have a standard rate plan. But if you're a business, there's a variety of rate plans that if you go above a certain tier, now you're paying more. And a smart business, what they want to do is figure out how they can get into a lower rate plan. And usually by doing the energy efficiency and the reduction of demand combined with solar, now they can move to a better rate plan.
Is it true that on the residential side, you can't be net positive at the end of the year? Is that the same in the commercial side?
Let's just say this, from what I understand, PG&E is never going to be like mailing you checks. They're only going to give you credit like that. And I think that's even the same with businesses.
What were some of the unique challenges with the size of the system you put in here?
So there were a couple things here that are interesting. Aesthetics were important to them, and inverters for this size system. They have multiple inverters that can fill it's hard to describe. These buildings have 2 stories, but in the middle there's like a utility level, like closet. And we put these inverters in a room. It would probably take up like this big of the wall, and so that they're out of sight, and they didn't want to really look at them. Excuse me. And so that was kind of an issue, because they were so big that they had to like cut holes in the wall and hoist them up on cranes to get them in there. But the actual installation was pretty easy, because it was a flat roof mount. It wasn't like a difficult roof to install. And
are they up on a frame at some sort of angle, or they're not?
These are ballast mount. I mean, I have this case study, or I have it in the back. I can give you more details, but they're flat mounted. They're not. There's different kinds of ways that you can install solar with tracking or tilt mount, but they decided the best application for this location was to just leave them flat, because it allowed the most amount of hours during the day to receive power.
What about any weight bearing? Because there's a lot of solar up there, obviously. Did you guys have to build any additional supports, or?
So the whole goal in general with solar for anybody is like, how can they get the most amount of power with paying the least amount of money? And so a designer's job, and I'm a marketing guy, I'm not an engineer or designer, but I know, because I work with these guys, to figure out, okay, how can we get this installation done in the most cost-effective way that's still gonna be effective? And in this case, it was their installation, I don't wanna say cost less, because it's pretty big, but it didn't require like special racking and special tilt mounts or kind of trackers and stuff
How
like
do
that.
you determine technologically the best solar panels to buy, and do you change, or does the industry change on a regular basis to accommodate these new technologies? Are they always gonna be 3 years off, or how does
The
that work?
one, that's a great question too. The one thing that I know is that to qualify for utility rebates, that any solar equipment has to go through sort of a third-party certification. And it was done, I think, because in the 70s when solar had like a little spike, there was a lot of inferior quality equipment that was being installed. There was a lot of installers that weren't maybe high quality or doing inferior work, and it kind of gave a black eye to the solar industry. And so now it's a lot more, I don't say heavily regulated, even including the rebates. In a commercial solar installation, you can't just like fill out a form and say, okay, well, we put up, you know, a megawatt here, can you give us a rebate or something like that? It's called PBI, performance-based incentives. So this whole tracking that you saw before, the monitoring, that information has to get sort of audited by the utilities. So they don't really want to pay more out into rebates than based on, you could say what you estimate is going to be produced, but they're basing it on what you're actually producing. And it's to the benefit of everybody, I think. But as far as the new technology, I think that if a solar module, say for example, if it can pass that, it's called like CEC certification, then people that distribute or buy solar equipment, they would say, okay, well, if it's past that, then I can have a certain comfort level with it. But sometimes it takes like a year or two to get through that certification. And a lot of it still though is driven, the metric that they use in this industry is like cost per watt. And even like 5 or 6 years ago, you were looking at like $8 or $9 per watt to do solar. And I would say in the past year or so, the pricing has dropped to 30% less than what it was just a few years ago. So now you can see solar going in for $4 a watt or $3.75 a watt or potentially even less. A lot of it's determined when you're buying in bulk. It's kind of like businesses can pay less per watt because of the volume that they're buying in, whereas residential will probably pay a little bit more because they don't have that like sort of buying clout.